As Super Sentai toy collectors, many mecha fans often ask, can we get something that's a little bit better than just a deluxe toy aimed at kids? And every once in a while, Bandai tosses a bone and throws out a fancy deluxe Sentai mecha release. Let's talk about all of them. Hello, this is Soundout here, and welcome back to another episode of Super Sentai Showcase. Today on episode 2, we're going to be talking about fancy Sentai DX Mecha. Mecha, of course, being the giant robots that Sentai teams pilot throughout the series. And over the years, the way that Deluxe Mecha has shifted and evolved meant we went from the old days where they were highly die-cast, highly, collectible, very expensive to produce nowadays forms, to the more all-plastic form we see today. And there is a lot of evolutions that I want to talk about on the Sentai Showcase series as well. But today we're going to be talking about how Bandai upgrades a deluxe mold into something fancier. Now, of course, this is episode 2 of the Sentai Showcase, so if you have not seen episode 1, I'd recommend go checking it out so you can understand how the format of this series runs. It was all about Sentai gears, it was a good time. But we're going to continue forward with the knowledge that you've already watched episode 1, so welcome back, everybody. Today's episode is going to be about Sentai Mecha. I figured with the first episode we talked about changers and collecting gimmicks. Today, let's talk about Sentai Mecha, because they're clearly a big part of what I love about Super Sentai. It's the majority of my collection. So today, we're going to go over a timeline, going from the first upgraded Deluxe Mecha all the way to the most recent. However, we will not be covering the other releases that you might think would be in this. So, for example, we're not going to talk about the Soul Chogokin Battle Fever Robo or Ultimate Daijujin, because those were built from the ground up to be collector's pieces. We're more worried about taking something that wasn't a collector's piece and making it a collector's piece, and seeing how successful that turned out. So I think that's a great way to start. Before we get too far in, if you hit the like button, hit the subscribe and the notification bell, you won't miss out on future videos, and the like button tells me you enjoyed this and want to see more episodes of Sentai Showcase. First one was a big hit, so I'm going to gladly continue this series, as long as you all enjoy it. So with that out of the way, let's begin and talk about the first fancy deluxe mecha back in the days before Premium Bandai existed, the Maji King Complete Edition. The Maji King Complete Edition was released on March 24th, 2006. This was about a year after the original Deluxe Maji King released in February of 2005. Now, the Maji King Complete Edition cost 10,000 yen, whereas the original Deluxe one cost 5,520 yen. So what was different about Maji King Complete Edition? Well, the biggest thing was that it came in a big fancy box, nice Velcro strap downs for it, but of course it had some extra features, the biggest thing being paint. There was a lot of things that were added to the very intricate design of Maji King in the series that the original toy couldn't fit into its initial paint budget. So Maji King Complete Edition goes and fills in all of those missing details from the Deluxe Maji King. And then to make sure there was some kind of physical bonus, they threw in the Maji Ranger ball form for Maji Fairy, and that made for a nice bonus itself. And it looks like an incredible edition of the Deluxe Maji King version, and in fact is on my Holy Grails list, as it's very hard to come by for a reasonable price. It's really cool, and it's nice to see that Bandai was like, let's do something fancier for collectors. Now again, this was prior to the existence of Premium Bandai, and so because of that, it's kind of an outlier. It just kind of exists on its own, and we wouldn't see anything fancier until the launch of the Super Sentai Artisan line, exclusive to Premium Bandai. For those who may not be unaware, Bandai had a premium collector's line called Super Sentai Artisan. It covered changers, it covered mecha, it covered some other little objects here and there, and the idea behind it was to have a premium collector line for Sentai fans in the way that Complete Selection Modification existed for Kamen Rider fans. Now, eventually the Artisan line would be retired after a couple controversies with their changer releases, maybe a topic we'll cover on this channel in the future, but there was a kind of sunsetting of the Super Sentai Artisan brand, and was the rise of the Memorial Editions, which to date are only changers. Now, Super Sentai Artisan sunsetting means that we started getting less of these fancy deluxe upgrades, but let's go through what we did get starting with ToQger. Releasing in October 2014 for 5,184 yen was the ToQger Rainbow Line set. This was essentially a upgrade kit to the deluxe ToQger. ToQger was notably not very articulate and a very blocky mecha, so this set gives him elbows, and you can put them onto the ports, and then now ToQger can move his elbows up and down. But to kind of beef out the package, 5 LED-enabled rainbow lines were included, essentially rails for your ToQger Resha, and then 1 for each of the main 5, and then they could connect together into 1 long track, or you could have 2 at the feet, so you have ToQger doing the finisher. And that was a cool set. I personally never picked it up because I was like, what am I going to do with these rails when I'm done? And the elbows aren't going to work great for big combos. But it was kind of a nice, like, oh, hey, they're offering something to upgrade our existing DX Mecha. Now, what followed was kind of a surprise to me as a collector of several years at that point. The Chogokin ToQger. Now, this was a ToQger released in November 2014 for 12,960 yen. This was essentially the original deluxe ToQger, but with a bunch of die-cast parts and chromed parts added, kind of giving it the feel of the older Popanika Sentai mecha. Of course, it did come at a cost, because the original ToQger, which had released just a few months prior in February 2014, only cost 7,312 yen in comparison. But the fun part is this is a fully functional ToQger. It's the same mold, they've just added a lot of die-cast, but not in places where it'd be super top-heavy. It was mostly added to the legs, and it kind of gave it a premium feel. This also means if you put the Resha inside the ToQger changer, you started getting something very heavy because you have a chunk of die-cast on your arm now. The other cool part is that it's completely compatible with other combinations, so if you want your ToQger still combined, it's not going to throw off the balance with the weight differential with the added die-cast metal. And that, I think, is a good upgrade because, as we'll see with some of them, that may not always be the case. Now, breaking that format a little bit, in December 2014 for 12,960 yen was the Karainer Robo General Schwartz version. This is a brand new mold. It's not a remold of something that existed at retail, but this is essentially the villain mecha that appeared frequently in ToQger. And what's really cool is that they gave us a villain mecha. It doesn't happen very often when they're not just repaints. I can only really think of a couple examples like Gokaiger from Magiranger or the Karainer Robo from ToQger, as we see here. So now this was pretty cool because it was a fully functional new mold, though it didn't have any die-cast parts like the ToQger, despite being the same price, but again, new mold. Now, in the series itself, the General Schwartz version is just an upgraded, personalized version of a Karainer Robo that was a mass production version. Now, if you wanted to get the head and extra parts to make the Karainer Robo into the mass production version, you had to purchase both the Chogokin ToQger and the Karainer Robo from Premium Bandai. And as a bonus to the part set that makes the mass production version, you also get an adapter that allows you to connect the deluxe drill Resha from the sword for ToQger Rokugo onto the actual Karainer Robo, which is a formation seen in the series. And so that's where it kind of takes the deluxe one and upgrades it, because it's allowing you to attach the drill Resha to something it couldn't attach to before. Now, that adapter is not going to work on any other figure because of the way the connection pegs work, but it's still cool that they took something that had kind of cross-compatibility and amplified it with adding the Karainer Robo. So clearly the ToQger Super Sentai Artisan mecha was a popular venture for Bandai. It was successful, and they decided to follow it up the following year with Shuriken Sentai Ninninger. Releasing in July of 2015 for 5,378 yen was the Super Sentai Artisan Shinobi Maru. This was a really cool piece because one of the complaints with the deluxe Shinkenger was that the figure of Shinobi Maru was not articulated and looked kind of stiff sitting in the cockpit. Even though there was movable handles, you couldn't have the figure move them because he also had to transform in an arm for the dragon form. So Bandai's solution to this was to upsell you something on Premium Bandai, which is kind of Bandai's solution to a lot of things. But what we got was a highly articulated Shinobi Maru figure that has full articulation and die-cast metal parts. And the cool part is that he's fully compatible with the deluxe mecha in the sense that he can sit in the cockpit chair for Shinkenger. He can't become the arm for the dragon mode, but you can actually pose him a little bit more dynamically in that chair, kind of pushing forward and back with the handles in a way that seemed almost intended. Plus, there are pegs to make sure you can clip him into place so he's not going anywhere. But the other benefit is that you get a fully articulated Shinobi Maru figure. It even has a tiny Aka-Ninja figure that can slide into his shoulder, and that is an impressive little detail to replicate something from the series. This is a cool figure, and I thought it was a neat addition. That's why it's part of my collection. And I think it was kind of neat to go, okay, this thing is more articulated in the show. Let's put this out for the collectors that want that extra level of articulation. Now, this was followed up in December 2015 for 5,994 yen with the Rodeo Maru and Shozetsu Aka-Ninja set. This was essentially doing the same thing that the Shinobi Maru figure did. You get Rodeo Maru from Bison King, except now he's fully articulated, but still compatible where he can attach and combine. And then you also get a Shozetsu Aka-Ninja figure for your Lion Hao, which can also combine as well as being fully articulated. So those are two cool pieces. But for me, because of my display, I don't really have the Shozetsu Aka-Ninja figure out, and the Rodeo Maru figure is hanging on the back of the combination, so I personally didn't pick it up. But it was nice to see that those at least three were represented in fully articulated form for those that wanted them to upgrade and make it look a little bit better than just kind of static, bricky pieces. Then in December 2015 as well, there was a Chogokin Shinkenger. This released for 16,200 yen and was an upgrade to the February 2009 7,500 yen deluxe version of Shinkenger. It had extra paint, but more specifically, it had die-cast metal, making it a big, hefty, chunky piece. Now, considering how heavy and chunky the final combination, Samurai Hao, is, I wouldn't recommend putting this Shinkenger in that unless you really want a nice hefty piece, but it should be fully compatible as it has the same mold as the deluxe one. Though since I had a deluxe one, I didn't feel the need to pick this up, and many others may not have done this because this was the last Chogokin Sentai mecha we would see in the Super Sentai Artisan line. So with Super Sentai Artisan doing mecha, it did seem like they had a focus on just current stuff between the ToQger or the Shinobi Maru. But with the release of the Chogokin Shinkenger, many fans across the globe were starting to wonder, is Bandai planning to resurrect older Sentai mecha? That Chogokin Shinkenger came 7 years after the original release, so it wasn't fresh, but they still were able to release a premium version. And then it became, can we get older mecha reissued or maybe upgraded? So releasing in March 2018 for 23,760 yen, the Super Sentai Artisan Dairanger set. This is one of the most gorgeous, beautiful Sentai mecha releases I have ever seen in my life, and I'm so glad I own one. This was essentially resurrecting the deluxe Dairanger, but this is not the original mold because they did not have the original mold anymore, so it was a brand new tool from the ground up. This allowed for extra details. Instead of stickers, everything was molded and painted in. They worked and added in more accurate posed minifigures versus the more static minifigures from before. They worked in an extra visor for the special attack, a second sword for the special attack. They even went in and tweaked some of the joints so that the head actually rotates. There's also an extra piece so that Ryuteo can also spin his hand. And if you want more detail on this thing, I did do a full review of it back in 2018. I absolutely love it, and I went into lovingly detail there, but I wanted to kind of give a broad overview for this segment. This was also an interesting thing because it actually had a pre-order minimum to be produced. If 2,000 weren't sold, it wasn't going to be made because of how high the cost was to craft these new molds specifically for a P-Bandai release. But they also added a stretch goal that if we got to 3,000 units, we would get a set of the Lai balls that are used to summon them in the Dairanger series. And we did actually get to that goal, so it seemed like it was a roaring success. And I gotta say, when the Super Sentai Artisan Dairanger got announced and when it was successful, it kind of felt like they could do anything, that this idea could really push forward as long as it had the fans' support. Yeah, the cost was high, but you could imagine things. Could we get a new live Robo? Could we get, things from Jetman? But unfortunately, there was only one other Sentai Artisan Deluxe Mecha, and that was Zenkaiger. Zenkaiger released in August 2018 for 14,440 yen, and to me didn't feel as fancy as Dairanger, and I didn't ultimately pick it up. But it was in the same boat. It needed 2,000 orders to get made. At 2,500 orders, they added in the Tiger Jewel. It came with some cool bonuses like backdrops. It had new molded plastic details so that it was more accurate. They painted it better to look more like the show model, and of course it was a new mold. And it was fully compatible with the Artisan Deluxe Dairanger. Now, unfortunately, I don't think it sold as well because there doesn't seem to be as many of them out there, and I think that everyone was like, okay, cool, what's next though? And we didn't really get a next. We didn't get a Daimugen, we didn't get a Future Sentai. That was kind of it. I will give credit to the Zenkaiger. They upgrade the electronics as well as upgrading the little orbs so they actually have the symbols on them. There was a lot of cool upgrades. It just didn't feel as revolutionary as Dairanger for some reason for a lot of people. And I think that's kind of where the deluxe upgrade line just ended. And that's kind of a bummer because there was a lot of potential there, but a huge cost. Dairanger was popular enough that they could carry that huge cost, but I don't know if other Sentai would be able to do the same. Now, sadly, was that not only the end of the deluxe upgrade line, that was also the end of Mecha and Artisan because Artisan folded pretty quickly after that. And that would be the last time we'd see a dedicated line to upgrading Sentai Mecha. However, we have had recent examples that did not leave us in the lurch when it comes to new upgraded mecha pieces, so let's take a look at what happened in the Reiwa era. Now, the first Reiwa era Sentai was Kira Major, and Kira Major got nothing, which I think a lot of fans would have liked considering how terrible Deluxe Kiramajin is. I'll talk about it one day. But there is a lot of things that were riding on the 45th anniversary series Zenkaiger, and it seemed to be doing well. The toy sales were strong, and they had introduced this combination system that a lot of fans of the anime Brave series would recognize as symmetrical dockers with the Juragown and Vrun Majin sets of Zenkai-Oh. And the thing was, when they first revealed the Juragown Zenkai-Oh, the original deluxe toy has these very flat legs, very flat proportions, and he looks very thin, especially compared to the show model. And the mini-plot kit tried to subvert this by adding additional foot pieces to make it a larger, more filled out experience while still being able to transform. And then Bandai decided to toss fans a chance at a new line of upgraded mecha with the deluxe Metal Append Zenkai-Oh Juragown set. Surprisingly, not a premium Bandai exclusive. This released on February 24th, 2022, about a year after the deluxe release in 2021. However, where I think this didn't sell and we didn't see future Metal Appends or even a Vrun Majin was because while the original deluxe Zenkai-Oh was 6,800 yen, the actual Metal Append was 15,000 yen. We had seen kind of like it's almost double price, but this was like way more than double. It was a huge cost, but it was a retail release, which also means I got it on clearance at Hobby Link Japan for 30 bucks. So yeah, that's kind of how it goes sometimes. I think this is an absolute upgrade though on the original Zenkai-Oh, because what you have is, in addition to being a die-cast version that has a lot of extra weight and heft to it and a lot more paint, you also get like these booties to put on his feet, so he looks like a fully formed robot. On top of that, it still has all the electronic sound gimmick that the original Zenkai-Oh contained. Plus, it's still fully compatible with other combinations, though you are going to have to take the booty off so that way it's not a lopsided mess. However, I would not recommend putting this into the big Zenroku Zenkai-Oh combination, since they are the arms and there's all plastic below them. It might drag it over. I've tried it. Not a recommended combo. But sadly, that was it. That was the only Metal Append release, and everything we talk about in this video will be P-Bandai from here on out. And I kind of wish we'd gotten the Vrun Majin, but I also can't say, oh, I wish we would have gotten it. I didn't buy Juragown when it came out. The cost was too high. It was a lot of money. I really like what I have now. It's a beautiful piece, but I also needed to buy myself a deluxe Zenkai-Oh Juragown so I could make Zenroku Zenkai-Oh without worrying about that thing toppling over. And that becomes a whole conversation about doubling up Sentai Mecha buying, and that becomes a whole conversation for a different video. Now in 2022, Donbrothers broke the mold of Sentai Mecha with Dan Oni Taijin not only debuting later in the year, but having a wide range of articulation. It was built for articulating more so than being a sturdy brick. And that was a big change-up, a big evolution step for the Sentai Mecha line. However, it still was restricted in some ways. The actual Don Robotaro had only a couple joints of movement. You can move the legs forward and back at the hips, but that was it. You weren't going to get any crazy poses. So in order to accommodate this, and to accommodate the fact that Bandai designers didn't know he would sit down in the show's debut, there was an additional set brought out called the Don Robotaro Departure Option Set, Movable Enhanced Version. a premium Bandai exclusive releasing in January 2023 for 6,600 yen. This included a more articulated Donbrothers, which had full range articulation. And I know I'm demoing it with the black Donbrothers. It's the same mold, so you can kind of see the difference in the way that the legs move. You had a lot more options, a lot more movability. However, they did remove the pegs on the back skirt, so you can't do the combinations, probably due to stability issues with adding a bunch of extra weight on top of it with the other two mecha. That being said, this set also did include a backdrop, a chair, and some open hands, so you can have a little bit more dynamic posing with your Don Oni Taijin. I think this is a cool set, but if you're going to be somebody that's going to leave your Donbrothers stuff in a full combo, it's not really necessary and not fully compatible with the later combinations. But for me, it's kind of nice having the black Don Oni Taijin because I can kind of go with, oh yeah, this is kind of how the hips work, and I have an idea of how this worked out. But I kind of like the, let's just upgrade a little part of the mecha instead of having to do the whole thing. And that brings us to our last fancy mecha as of this date, which is the Deluxe King-Ohger King Class Heavy Paint Plating version, a premium Bandai exclusive that was released in March 2024 for a whopping 19,800 yen, which is a lot compared to the deluxe one that released in March 2023 for 8,500 yen. So what are you getting with this? Well, you're getting the Deluxe King-Ohger, which is already an amazing figure with more articulation than any other Sentai mecha in history. But now it's going to be coated in a lot of heavy paint. Metallics, shininess. This thing is going to sparkle in the way that it does when it does its finisher move. In addition to this, it also adds a brand new version of its sword that is much longer and has more ports to connect God Ant, so you can have God Ant running up the sword like it does in the show. And on top of that, just to round out the package, they threw in gold versions of Guardian Rolling and Guardian Snail, so that way you can add those to the other black and gold versions of the King-Ohger mecha and fill out a complete black and gold God King-Ohger. Now this set was very expensive and very fancy looking and pretty impressive, though it's not something I needed personally because it's a little too fancy. I don't live in the climate that goes well with metallic paint and plating, but hey, if you do, it looks amazing. So that brings us up to current days. Will we see upgrades to other deluxe mecha? Will we see a Boom Boom trailer that has full articulation? A full action Boom Boom Jirobo? Does he come with extra cars? Will it be extra paint? Will they do anything at all? The mystery is in the future. But in the meantime, I think this was a good way to reflect on how Bandai has upgraded things. I didn't include every P-Bandai mecha because there's some that are just black and gold repaints. I was kind of going for, does this upgrade the original deluxe mold? This is also why I didn't include full action Kyoryujin or the future full action stuff, because those are brand new molds. It's not upgrading a deluxe toy, it's making a new deluxe toy. And so on that, I think it's going to be kind of interesting to see how Sentai Mecha continues to evolve, and I kind of liked recapping some of these fancier versions, the ones I have and the ones I don't. So like I said in the intro, if you like this, hit the like button. It lets me know that you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments what else you'd like to see in relation to Sentai Mecha in the Sentai Showcase series. And hit subscribe and the notification bell if you haven't already so you don't miss out on a future episode, as well as all the other wonderful videos on this channel. If you want to hear me talk more Sentai and talk about all kinds of other cool stuff with a panel of co-hosts, check out our live streams every Mondays at 5 p.m. Eastern here on this YouTube channel. You can also join our Discord server in the link below to have discussions with all kinds of other different fans and have some cool discussions and opinions and get a lot of news. I get a lot of my news for the live stream from my Discord server, so check it out. Also, if you'd like to help support the channel directly and this series to continue as it is, you can join as a channel member for perks like member-exclusive live streams, early access to videos, shoutouts in videos, and other cool things. So check the button down below, and let's give a special shout out to some of our channel members. Special shout out to our channel members, including our Captain Tiers, Infinity Wartorn, Spin-54, Super Shadix Boom, Toma K, Jamie's World, SSJ4 Jason, Psycho O's, Master Ben 95, Sentai Ranger Donnie, Ramon Gray, Muhammad Faiz Daniel, Sutargo's the Kaiju from Krypton. Thank you all for your support. If you wish, you can also find me on social media across most platforms at Soundout12. My awesome graphic designer is on social media and on our Discord at DarkClaw643. You can also find Hero Club at hero-club.com for tokusatsu interviews, news, reviews, and more, and plenty more to come in the future. And until next time, this is Soundout saying, see you in the next showcase.